In the early morning of July 1st, 1916, as London residents slept, some might have awoken to the sound of a distant boom. In a bustling city like London, many would have ignored the faint reverberation across the English Channel. However, what Londoners perceived as a distant rumble was, in fact, the beginning of a cacophony of destruction. The deadliest day in British military history had begun. By the end of 1915, the First World War had devolved into a bloody stalemate. The Entente powers, France, Britain, Russia, Italy, and Serbia, were desperate for solutions. Throughout 1915, they faced the unexpected maneuverability of German forces, which allowed the rapid transfer of troops between different fronts. To combat this, Entente leaders decided that in 1916, they would launch major offensives simultaneously, stretching the German army to its limit and breaking the might of the Kaiser for good. While the Italians struck in the south and the Russians marched east, the British and French prepared to launch their attack on the Somme River in northern France. This location, where British and French forces met, was chosen primarily because it was devoid of significant strategic value, making it an ideal site for an offensive. Facing heavily defended German trench lines, the initial plan envisioned 39 battle-hardened French divisions advancing in the south, while still inexperienced British and Commonwealth forces supported from the north. However, the Germans launched their own offensive in February 1916 against the French fortress city of Verdun, drawing more French troops into a deadly struggle. Consequently, the number of French divisions allocated to the Somme offensive dropped from 39 to 12, turning the operation into a primarily British affair. Despite this change, British commander Sir Douglas Haig remained optimistic. The ongoing Battle of Verdun had placed an enormous strain on the German army. Furthermore, after years of production, Haig believed the British Army now possessed adequate artillery and ammunition to carry out a massive assault. Against the advice of his more cautious subordinate, Sir Henry Rawlinson, Haig decided that British forces would seize the first two lines of German defenses simultaneously, aiming for a decisive breakthrough. Leading up to the offensive, more than 1,500 British guns fired 1.7 million rounds into the German front line. On the morning of July 1st, this bombardment intensified, with nearly 4 million shells fired in just an hour. At 7:28 a.m., the British detonated 10 massive mines placed under German defenses. 2 minutes later, British soldiers went over the top, advancing toward German lines, only to be met with a deadly barrage of machine gun fire. The intense British bombardment had limited effectiveness due to a lack of heavy guns. Out of the 1,500 artillery pieces used, only 233 were large enough to cause serious damage. Furthermore, up to 30% of the shells were duds. Haig's decision to seize both German trenches simultaneously meant the bombardment was spread over a larger area, reducing its impact. Consequently, many German defenses remained intact, leading to a slaughter as British troops advanced. Loaded with up to 60 pounds of gear, British soldiers struggled uphill towards the German trenches under heavy fire. In the first hour alone, the British suffered 30,000 casualties. Some units, like the 1st Newfoundland Regiment, lost up to 91% of their combat strength. Despite the chaos, there were some successes. South of the Albert Bapaume Road, British forces achieved a majority of their objectives, and further south, the French captured all their targets. and took 4,000 German prisoners. Despite these achievements, the first day of the Somme was a catastrophic failure, with 57,000 British casualties. However, the offensive continued to maintain pressure on the Germans, critical as the French bled at Verdun. Both sides attempted to consolidate their positions. By July 10th, French intelligence concluded that German defenses were stronger than before the battle began. The British prepared for a second offensive on July 14th, learning from their mistakes. This attack had more limited objectives and took place over a smaller front. Preceded by a whirlwind bombardment and launched at night, the July 14th offensive was more successful, largely capturing the second line of German defenses for relatively few casualties. The next phase of the battle, from July 15th to September 14th, is known as the Period of Forgotten Battles. Haig and Rawlinson aimed to seize areas around High Wood, Delville Wood, and Ginchy in preparation for a major assault on September 15th. This phase saw disorganized attacks with limited success. The British attack on September 15th introduced the world to the tank. Despite their slow speed and reliability issues, tanks supported successful infantry advances. Haig placed an order for 1,000 more tanks. However, new German defenses and heavy October rains complicated further operations. Bloody fighting continued until November, with small gains but no decisive breakthrough. The Battle of the Somme finally ended on November 18, 1916. The cost was staggering: 420,000 British casualties, 205,000 French, and an estimated 600,000 German casualties. The Entente had advanced just 7 miles. Though initially seen as senseless slaughter, some modern historians view the battle as a costly but necessary victory. It forced Germans to withdraw to the Hindenburg Line in 1917 and initiated unrestricted submarine warfare, leading to US involvement and Germany's eventual defeat.